A lot of us have heard that. That's Sing, Sing, Sing by Benny Goodman. Well, here's a little snippet of a drum solo by Baby Dodds. So there's a connection there. And you're probably thinking, okay, great, Ben, but why are you telling me this? Well, here's what I stumbled on. And it was kind of a big eureka moment. I was digging through a lot of Led Zeppelin stuff, thinking, okay, everybody wants to hear Fool in the Rain. Everybody wants to hear Immigrant Song and know how to play that. And I thought, I want to pick some of my favorite ones too. And so I already played Good Times, Bad Times for you. That's like one of my favorites. But there's an older one, and I had forgotten about it. It was supposed to go on Led Zeppelin 3. And before I play it for you, I want to talk a little bit about the New Orleans thing. The New Orleans thing comes from a marching tradition. And we think modern marching bands, we think very straight, And down in New Orleans, they do things a little bit different. It's not quite straight. It's not quite swung. It's what they call in the cracks. It's a little bit in between. And that's a beat. That's a beat in traditional New Orleans jazz. They didn't in the beginning. They didn't have big ride cymbals. That came later in the jazz tradition. All the time was played on the snare drum because they were marching. They were marching. They didn't have some guy walking next to them carrying a cymbal. And so that's what the New Orleans thing sounds like. And I was kind of sifting through some stuff, and I came across this track. Playing drums. That's John Bonham. Sounds like a New Orleans street beat, doesn't it? Now, I'm not saying that John Bonham spent a lot of time in New Orleans. I'm sure they played some shows there because they played gazillions of shows in the United States. But there's a connection. There's a connection between the music he grew up loving and listening to, and that made it into his groove. That sort of shuffle beat. And if you flip in your handout, your handy dandy handout, I started thinking about some more Zeppelin tunes that use this kind of groove. We've got Poor Tom that I just played for you. We've got Gallows Pole, which sounds like this. And there's a shuffle to it. He's not playing it straight. A little bit of a shuffle. In the middle of how many more times they do a big blues medley from some old blues tunes, and there's one thing in there that I absolutely love that John Bonham plays, and that's the next to last line on the handout. It sounds like this. Sounds like a New Orleans street beat, doesn't it? Now, you might think, okay, well that's what he uses for his like snare grooves where he's playing both hands on the snare. Check out the last one. This is the middle section of Fool in the Rain. That's a groove that they ripped off from a Brazilian feel called samba. Bonham heard it when he was watching soccer. British people love their soccer, and so do Brazilians. And if the story goes, they heard it during a commercial, and they thought, man, we got to get that on our next record. So let's take Poor Tom and let's just move it. Let's just move some stuff from the snare to the hi-hat. See what that sounds like. Kind of sounds like Bonham. Not that I would ever claim to sound like that guy. I would love to sound like that guy. We should all be so lucky. But I think that's one thing that's really important is if you want to sound like somebody, Bonham's probably spent his teens spinning Little Richard sides again and again and again. And Menzie, I want to borrow your wisdom for a second, because you used you might not remember, but you used an analogy a while ago talking about how you immerse yourself in something about dip something in wax once. I don't know. I think it might have been how you make a candle. You don't make a candle by dipping the string in wax once. You got to do it over and over and over. And that's where, Bonham heard the stuff he loved. He wasn't thinking about it. He wasn't thinking, well, I really like that New Orleans feel. He may not have even been aware exactly where it came from. I don't know the guy personally. But somehow it made it into his playing. And that's my point. Now, before we get heavy into some of the transcriptions, I want to talk about a couple things. You probably noticed that there's a ton of transcriptions in here. Now, of the drummers in the room, are there any drummers who can't read music? It's okay if you can't. John Bonham couldn't. No? Okay, well, good. Good. That means everybody can check out the transcriptions. Why transcribe? Why do we transcribe? What's the point? So you have stuff to talk about at a clinic?
Makes you pay attention?
Yeah. For me, and this is just my personal thing, when I have to transcribe something, when I have to commit to something on paper, I really want to make sure I'm hearing every detail correctly. And I'm always amazed when I transcribe something that how I thought a groove went, it's not actually how it went. For example, the shuffle groove I talked about from the middle of how many more times, I used to think that groove, see how it's a pickup, starts on 4. This is how many more times, next to last line on the bottom boogie shuffle groove examples page. See how it starts on 4? I always thought that started on 1. My entire life up until like 2 days ago, I thought that started on 1. And you can imagine my surprise when I was trying to commit it to paper, and suddenly, at the end of that section, when they go into another groove, there's an extra beat, and I went, whoa, wait a second. And I had to go back and listen to it again, and I thought, oh, that's why John Paul Jones always comes in on what sounds like beat 2. Because it's not beat 2, it's beat 1. So I'm always amazed at how when I really have to pay attention to put something on paper, it really makes me pay attention to the smaller details, and I think it gets you inside a drummer's head. And I really want to be inside of John Bonham's head. So we transcribe so that we can pay attention. We transcribe so we can imitate. Why imitate? I'm not going to give the answer for this one.
Well, I mean, you might be in a band where that's the song they want to play. And
it could be a practical thing. Yeah, I've definitely had wedding gigs. I've had somebody say, "No, you need to play, so it sounds like, you need to make it sound like the recording."
Part of the process of finding your own sound?
Absolutely, yeah. That's the answer I was looking for. Chances are, if Bonham's playing made you excited about music, you can get a little bit of that into your playing, then you can get somebody else excited. And if there's somebody in your audience, maybe they'll buy one of your CDs or one of your T-shirts and come to your next show, right? And so we imitate so that we can find our own personality on the instrument. If you think about comedians, when they first start out, they do impressions, right? Or they tell somebody else's joke, right? This is what we do as artists, is we imitate first. That's what we do as human beings. I mean, how many of us growing up look in the mirror one day and think, oh my God, it's my dad. We imitate what we know. All right, so I want to talk about a couple grooves. How am I doing on time? I talk a lot, I know.
Enjoy yourself.
Cool, all right. Well, the immigrant song. I'm looking to play this for just a second.